This conference will now be recorded.
వెల్కమ్ టు డాక్టర్ టిఎస్పిఆర్ షో. నేను మీ డాక్టర్ తంగెల్లా శివప్రసాద్ రెడ్డి అలియాస్ డాక్టర్ టిఎస్పిఆర్. నమస్తే, ఆదాబ్, హలో అండ్ వామ్ వెల్కమ్ టు మై గురువు గారు ప్రొఫెసర్ పురుషోత్తం రెడ్డి గారు, గురుతుల్యులు బివి సుబ్బారావు గారు. ఎంతో కాలంగా ఈ టాపిక్ పై ఎక్స్క్లూజివ్ చర్చ ఎందుకు లేదని నేను బివి సుబ్బారావు గారు ఎప్పుడు మాట్లాడుకుంటూ ఉంటాను. అన్న దొరుకుతలేడు, అన్నస్వామి దొరుకుతలేడు, ఎట్లా చేద్దాం అని చెప్పి మొన్న సాటర్డే కూడా అదే అన్నాడు. ఇది మజా వస్తలేదు. అసలు మూలం పర్యావరణ ఉద్యమాలు, పర్యావరణం గురించి అవగాహన చేస్తే ఏ విధంగా ఉంటుంది అని ఆ కాలంలో మేము పడ్డ కృషి ఈరోజు మీరు COP26 అనండి, COP27 అనండి, వాతావరణంపై ఏ విధంగా మార్పులు కానీ ప్రభావం చూపుతా ఉందో స్వయాన మనం హైదరాబాదే కొచ్చిన్ తీసుకోవచ్చు, కేరళలో మళ్ళీ అక్కడ ఉత్తరాఖండ్ కూడా తీసుకోవచ్చు. ఏ విధంగా ఉండి ఉండి వరదలు వస్తాయి, విపరీతమైన వేడి మరుక్షణం, పొంగి పొర్లుతున్న నదులు మరుసటి రోజు ఎండిపోతున్నాయి. ఇప్పుడు దీపావళి ఈ సమయంలో తీసుకుంటే నిన్న మొన్నటి వరకు 30-32 కనిష్ట వాతావరణం, 24-25, ఈ రోజు 14. ఎకాఎకి ఈ విధంగా వాతావరణంలో మార్పులు ఎందుకు వస్తున్నాయి? మనం పర్యావరణాన్ని ప్రేమిస్తూ పర్యావరణానికి అనుగుణంగా ప్రకృతి సహజ సిద్ధమైనటువంటి జీవితాన్ని గడుపుతున్నామా, లేక దాని విధ్వంసానికి కారణమై ఈ పెను మార్పులు ఈ వాతావరణంలో కానీ పర్యావరణంలో పెను మార్పులు రావడం మన జీవన శైలిని, మన జీవించే విధానినే మనను ఈరోజు మనం మనుగడనే ప్రశ్నార్థకం చేయడం, మనమే దానికి కారకులమా? మనం ఎన్నుకున్నటువంటి ప్రజాప్రతినిధులు కేవలం డబ్బులు, ఓట్లు, ఆ పార్టీ ఫండ్కే నిమిత్తమై కార్పొరేట్ కల్చర్ తీసుకొచ్చి పెద్ద పెద్ద బడా బాబులను మన పైకి త్రోలడం మనం చేసుకున్నటువంటి ఈ పర్యావరణం విధ్వంసానికి మూల కారణమా? ఎందుకంటే మనం ఆఖరి కాదు, మన తర్వాత మన పిల్లలు, వాళ్ళ పరిస్థితి ఏంది? పురుషోత్తం అన్న కానీ బివి సుబ్బారావు గారు అదే చెప్పేది, వీళ్ళకి తెలివి లేదా నాకు అర్థం కావడం లేదు. రేపు రేపు పిల్లలకి ఏమిస్తారు? మేము గొంతు జించి అరుస్తా ఉన్నాం, ఆ వయసు ఇంతవరకు వచ్చింది, సుప్రీంకోర్టు నుంచి ఇక్కడ వరకు కేసులు వేసుకుంటూ వస్తున్నాం, ఇంకా ఎప్పుడు చైతన్యవంతులు అవుతారు? ఈ షోసే కదా మూలం. అందు గురించే ఈరోజు షో చాలా ముఖ్యమైనది. ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్ మూవ్మెంట్స్ అండ్ మిస్టర్ ప్రొఫెసర్ పురుషోత్తం రెడ్డి గారు. టైటిల్ అదే అయినా అన్న ఎప్పుడు చెప్తుంటాడు, సుబ్బన్న కోపం వస్తే ఎత్తి అవతల పడేస్తాడని. ఎందుకంటే హీఈస్ ఎ స్పోర్ట్స్ మ్యాన్. ఆ స్పిరిట్ ఉంది కాబట్టి అంశానికి ఇంత ప్రాధాన్యత వచ్చి ఛానల్ను ఈరోజు పర్యావరణం అన్నా వాతావరణం అన్నా అందరు చూస్తా ఉన్నారు. పీపుల్ హావ్ బీన్ వాచింగ్ డిఆర్టీఎస్పీఆర్ ఛానల్స్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ the two gurus. I again salute them. We could make or streamline environment and climate as mainstream topics. P.V. Subbarao garu, please.
Namaskar. Thank you, Swami. Long awaiting. Today it's my pleasure and honor interacting with a noble personality, Professor Purushottam Reddy garu. In fact, he is popularly known as man of the ozone in late 80s, mid 80s also, mid 80s of 84. Time and again in every public talk, he was cautioning the people and the system on the ozone, depletion of the ozone, infrared radiation, all other things. That could be a premature situation for India to understand it. But the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy suddenly shook the roots of the entire country. Our very thought process is changed. And another important thing is he largely influenced to step into environment movement due to personal loss. His own rose garden became the victim of industrial pollution. The first pollution issues were identified in the east of Hyderabad around Sarur Nagar, but later they could realize the real danger in the west of Hyderabad. Professor Purushottam Reddy is synonymous to environment and Paryavarnam. Paryavarnam, Purushottam Reddy, రెండు మారుపేర్లు, two faces of the same coin, what I feel. And sometimes in a lighter vein, Purushottam Reddy garu tells, ఇది ఒకటే కదా మనకు వచ్చేది, ఇంకేం రాలేదు, ఇది ఒకటే చాలు, ఇంతకన్నా గొప్ప ఇంకేం కావాలి అని. So he also contributed his thoughts through a research document which was awarded PhD Environment Policy. We requested Professor Purushottam Reddy garu to give us time. And today we will be largely focusing on the movements. So welcome to Professor Purushottam Reddy garu, and
Thank
popularly
you, sir.
we all with an love and affection we call him Anna, the big brother. So it could be an accidental or coincidence, whatever it is. At the very early phases of your life, you witnessed the death of the rose garden, paradise lost, because sitting in a rose garden is something like paradise. Suddenly, overnight, you could feel that the brown color in the open well, and the entire rose plants withered away. I feel that could have impacted you and influenced you to look into the roots of pollution and start your journey. Please.
Yeah, actually, as you rightly pointed out, India evoked the problems of pollution because of 1984 Bhopal gas disaster. And this, as everybody knows, it was December 3rd, 1984. Exactly 1 month later, our farm, my daddy had a beautiful 14-acre plant nursery on the eastern side of Hyderabad in Sarun Nagar. And my younger brother, who had studied in Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry, for 20 years he was there, he worked in Auroville. So with all that experience, he set up a rose nursery, rose plants nursery. And at one time we had some hundreds of varieties of roses. There were other plants also. We had a grape garden, we had some small poultry, and we used to grow our own food 100% organic. The traditional way where India was, even in our village, because we came from that background, it was all organic farming, except for the grape garden where we were compelled to use some pesticides on the advice of the grape consultants, but otherwise everything was organic. Unfortunately, what happened is because of the a neighboring industry by name Siris, SIRIS, because of it polluting the area left and right. They were polluting the water, the groundwater particularly, the air, and we were blissfully not, I mean, in other words, we were ignorant of the consequences of having a chemical industry not very far away from our farm. So by January, slowly the water in our well, we had an excellent well, one of those very limited wells that Hyderabad had built in the Qutub Shahi times. And of course, we purchased this. We did not dig that or construct that particular well. It was done by some Nawabs, and we had purchased it. Which that particular well was almost like a swimming pool, and unfortunately, the water started getting uh, the color of Coca-Cola, and very soon it became toxic. We had no other go, and we still started using the same water for the grape garden and for the plant nursery. And within a span of 2 3 months, the entire rose garden, was completely destroyed, and even the grapes, the vines, they were also affected to a great extent. And we had other plants, several, about 40, 50 other varieties of plants, the crotons, the papayas, the ferns. But ultimately, we realized in a short span of 3 to 4 months, the whole thing became virtually a biological desert. Now, the question is, my father actually was looking to me because I was by then a university teacher in the Department of Political Science, OU. And naturally, he was expecting that I should be doing something because when we have a problem, we have to know the entire family should stand together. So I also did not know how to take up this issue. But one thing that because I belong to political science, having taught the subject of Indian Constitution and the political ideologies, because this was in 1985 January, and I joined the university in 1972. So I was already a 12 I mean, a university teacher with about 12 to 13 years seniority. So with that background, along with a couple of research scholars, we started working on this problem. And our first statement was, media release was about how our farm was affected, and how the entire neighborhood in Saranagar was affected, the groundwater was contaminated, and how it was impacting the lives of the people, the economies of the people. And it so happened that the effluents which were let into a trench, those days we used to, the Qutub Shahis built a series of trenches all along around the city of Hyderabad. And one such trench was just adjacent to that industry. And the effluents of that industry, um, by gravity, they were there in the trench. So, and some cattle had, even the goats had consumed that effluents and they died. So naturally, the owners of the cows or the cattle and the sheep, they staged a protest in front of the factory, That was the first public expression of anger by the public, and that gave us an idea that we also should take it up. So slowly we were, because we were from the university, I was supported by several faculty members from different subjects, from chemistry, from sciences, from public administration, economics, and so on. And we held press conferences. Believe me, friends, the media in Hyderabad took up that issue on their shoulders, and they even christened our struggle as citizens against pollution. This the Hyderabad media gave, and I recall that wonderful my association with all the media those days, and particularly Robin Banerjee, a very young youngster. Those days he was in News Time and subsequently in Indian Express, and a lot of other young Amar was there, Madhabushi, Sridhar, Shiva Prasad, and so many youngsters they were there, and they all lent their support to the cause. Uh, as and how the media was highlighting, then we started thinking what next. So it was at this stage Dr. Govardhan Reddy, a radiologist and a close relative of mine, he wanted to approach the High Court. So we all agreed, myself, my younger brother Ravindra Reddy, Dr. Govardhan Reddy, we all filed a wonderful case. And here we were helped by the senior most advocate those days, Pratap Reddy, K. Pratap Reddy. And with all his experience and knowledge, he gave a wonderful expression in the legal terms. And when the case was filed in the High Court, the judges appointed, as a response to this particular case, they appointed an advocate commission. That is, the court has a right to get first-hand information, and when they feel they need to know more, they sent a commission of advocates. And what we did was we informed the public through All India Radio and also through the print media. And the one must recall the kind of response the citizens gave. Hundreds of citizens in every colony, they were waiting for the Advocate Commission to come to their colony and to receive their memorandums. And this happened all in about 30, 40 major colonies all around the factory. Looking at the response, yeah, Advocate Commission came to the doctors' colony, to other colonies, and they took public representation. They visited the Gram Panchayat. The Sarpanch gave evidence. So finally, with a lot of information, they submitted their report to the High Court. And subsequently, it took quite some time, but that particular industry has been closed down. Now, the point here is that when there is a problem and when citizens take it up, though it was our first, we never planned for it. It was a problem uh, which we had to face. Looking at our struggle and the success story, the neighboring all around Hyderabad, because Hyderabad, as everybody knows, it is the bulk drugs capital of India. Thanks to IDPL, a public sector undertaking which was located in Hyderabad, and they did a great job. And they started producing medicines for the poor people of this country. But the scientists who worked in IDPL subsequently left IDPL. They joined hands with the financial institutions. I'm not finding fault, but they should have continued to support IDPL. But anyway, forgetting that particular thing, Hyderabad witnessed. As a result of these scientists coming out and setting up industries on their own, Hyderabad can be described as having witnessed the proliferation of industries all around Hyderabad. And that is why we see hundreds of pharmaceutical industries located right from Sarunnagar, Nacharam, Jidimekla, Patancheru, Katidan, and all around Hyderabad. And again, on different roads, the Medak Road, the Sangareddy Road. So, and we see that those days, now this is one observation. The second observation is what was the attitude of the government? The government thought that industrialization per se was development.
Anna,
That
one
is,
minute. So it all started with a personal loss which could trigger off, and it's not only a personal loss to your family, but there were several silent lamps in Sarurnagar area who were silently suffering from the water pollution in those days. And your initiative boosted the morale of the citizens of Eastern Hyderabad. And by any chance, do you have the repetition copy or the number so that we
yeah,
can document
these
and
things
digitize it?
we can get the, because they
We
are
will get
there.
it.
Once
Yeah,
a case is,
we will get it. And second thing is, at the same time, as you said, 1 month before, the Bhopal gas tragedy happened. So I am looking at, uh, okay, the Sarur Nagar incident probably should have, sensitized the state government, and state government, should have conducted some studies, and because that was the period, 80s was the period where they were, as you rightly pointed out, the pharmaceutical industry was, growing in a rapid manner. uh, do you think that, the Bhopal gas tragedy triggered off in developing the environment institutions and environment acts at the central level?
yeah, I wish to add, for this question, there are three, 4 points I wish to make. I'll come to the response of the central government slightly later, but once again, going back to Saramnagar struggle. In fact, when we look at the media coverage of that particular struggle, that is because of this incident having taken place immediately after the Bhopal gas disaster. That is what Bhopal gas disaster did is it sensitized the world, sensitized India and Hyderabad, I mean, including every major city in India. And therefore, Bhopal was a sad commentary on the kind of industries and pollution that were manifesting in this country. Hyderabad media was aware of that and they were sensitized because of, what happened in Bhopal. 4,000 people died just like that in a matter of 2 hours. And because this incident occurred after that, the media, because it was already educated because of Bhopal, so they immediately jumped because today, we may take up much bigger issues like uranium mining or nuclear reactor. Believe me, friends, the kind of attention media gave to the first struggle, that is Sarun Nagar, because I remember News Time gave 1.5 page coverage in a single day. Enadu 70% page. Hindu of all the papers, more than 60% page with all photographs. And when we look at the kind of attention the print media gave, definitely they were influenced by Bhopal gas disaster. Coming to the response of the central government to Bhopal gas disaster, they came up with what is now known as the EP Act, Environment Protection Act of 1986. That is, here we need to, go back to 1984 because Madam Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister and who was definitely environment friendly, she was assassinated on October 31st, 1984, and Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, a novice to politics, but there were so it was a turbulent times, and Bhopal gas disaster occurred at about the same, that is in December. That is, and the government of India came up with what is known as the Comprehensive Environment Protection Act of 1986. But what happened is, this is where I want to draw your attention, Suparna. What happened is that act itself is wonderful. Original act is wonderful. It has been diluted over a period of time because of corporate pressures. But I wish to add that the government of India wanted to go in for EPA, Environment Protection Authority, because having brought the EP Act, that was the natural corollary. The government of India wanted to go in for EPA. But then the corporates of India, they exerted pressure on the political system and they succeeded in stalling, in preventing the government from setting up EPA. And this from 1986 to till date, that is 2022. India is one of the largest kind of democracies in the world, world's largest democracy, and the biggest open system with the second highest population and the fifth largest economy. Still, India does not have Environment Protection Authority. So this is a matter of serious concern and it definitely affects the image of India outside India. Because with what face will the Indian delegation go? For example, next month they'll be participating in COP27. And what if somebody asks, do you have EPA? If somebody asks the Indian delegation, what is the status of the working of Environment Protection Authority? What reply they will give? They can only say, well, we have pollution control board. But what the government of India and the various political parties in this country, what they don't realize is that pollution can at best be described as a chapter in the book of environment. Therefore, to tackle the total subject of environment, because environment as a subject, it is not just confined to pollution, it's not just water pollution or air pollution or solid waste. It is a much larger subject and basically it has to do with the kind of development that is being promoted in any country. So, this is where India is lacking, and it is time India constituted Environment Protection Authority. This I am not saying. Even the Supreme Court of India has umpteen number of times. It has even cautioned the government of India, you constitute and you tell us. But so far, whatever the party was at, central government, irrespective of political parties, none of the Indian political parties have pledged in their manifestos to set up EPA because, like in any other country, Indian political parties continue to be under the thumb of the corporates. So
Thanks,
coming
Aman.
back to yeah, coming
Aman,
back to yeah,
you see, it's very interesting, the mid 1980s. India witnessed a sudden blast of, the Bhopal gas tragedy. Thousands of people died. and impacted the genetic mutation. And children even today, born with mutilated either legs or hands or eye from an air pollution in the central India, we have witnessed water pollution in Hyderabad, Dhaka. And the subject was new, challenging for the media people to take it to the people. And as you rightly pointed out, the media in Hyderabad acted so positively, taking these challenges before the system and before the people. And I also wonder, this is the period where we also, were hearing about Chernobyl nuclear disaster. From air pollution to water pollution to nuclear disaster.
Yeah,
So these are the three things, which uh, probably might have, gave you much more moral strength to fight against the system. So
it's a
please.
wonderful question. In fact, I wanted to connect to this point, but since that question has been raised, I request you to recall once again the times right from 1972 Stockholm Conference to 1992 Rio Conference, and in particularly the period between 1972 and 1983. In the When we look at the growth of the subject, that 11-year period can be described as an extraordinary phase where almost all the universities in America, in Europe, and elsewhere, except in India, Indian universities connected very lately, but even right now, still they are not fully connected. But in America and Europe, they connected to this subject of environment immediately after Stockholm. And that is why you see thousands of articles were published, PhDs on the subject were produced, and books were published. So, one side, there has been a tremendous growth of the subject when it comes to the academics. Here, I would like to mention, apart from the book 1972, Limits to Growth, that book can be described as having uh, brought about effective changes when it comes to the understanding of development. Because what is development? A typical Indian political party would think that setting up an industry is development, and they will never ask questions about the environmental implications of the setting up of that particular industry. Whereas that particular book, Limits to Growth, published by Club of Rome, they have highlighted the two major limits. Number one is the depletion of the natural resources, and the second thing is the increasing cost of pollution. Having said that, we come to the other, that is, on one side, there was a growth of literature and publication of articles, particularly in the field of environment, right from the uh, the Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson, to the future we want. That is,
Our common future is there. Hello? Hello?
Some disturbance, some
స్వామి
technical
మీరు
disturbance.
వినగలుగుతున్నారా?
Vinod, I think he's coming back. Anna is coming back.
Okay.
There was some technical hitch.
Yeah,
I think.
that was the period actually, 72 to 83, 72 Stockholm Conference, which
Yeah.
ignited, and where Indira Gandhi, the late Prime Minister, she personally attended that, and then uh, senior most, civil society activist Anil Agrawal accompanied her, and that influenced him to establish the Down to Earth magazine, Center for Science and Environment. Those are the periods, where these things were actually. So I was actually tracking down and following Professor Purushottam Reddy, all his speeches and all. So I was just looking, the kind of you know mentions he brings out,
Yeah.
the silent spring, limits to growth, and all of our common future,
Mm.
and simultaneously was highlighting the rapid depletion of the ozone layer, natural resources depletion, and all. So this was the time, and at the same time, we also had a proposal of setting up a nuclear power plant at Nagarjuna Sagar backwaters area, where he took up the cause.
Mm.
So that was the period where, from an air pollution to water pollution, and I wonder, in spite of 3.5 decades, governments still they declare as if they are discovering the groundwater pollution.
Yeah.
Just 3 months back, the parliament declares that 80% of the Indian groundwater is contaminated, as if they are discovering now. So this is an unfortunate thing. And the
Yeah.
state government, irrespective of the political backgrounds, right from 84,
Yeah.
the serious groundwater pollution. Today, more than 70% of Hyderabad is groundwater polluted,
Yeah.
and 90% is surface water polluted. Then what
Yeah.
is that the governments are doing?
Mm.
And they only, our Bhagavad Gita in environmental thing is we just borrow every guideline from the EPA of
Yeah.
USA, and Act was introduced,
Yeah.
and pollution control boards were established in those periods.
Mm.
But unfortunately, very little attention was paid in building the capacities of the personnel in the pollution control board.
Yes.
Large number of the engineers who were appointed in
Yeah.
the pollution state pollution control boards and even in the central pollution control boards were
Yeah.
public health engineers who
Yes.
only look into the fecal matter of the water pollution.
Yeah.
So that's an unfortunate thing, without building and without building the capacities of these engineers, environment engineers,
Yeah.
and largely the focus was recruiting the environment engineers rather than the building a multidisciplinary. Environment is a multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
It it poses multifaceted problems
Yeah.
and which demands multidisciplinary approaches. It's not a
Yes.
single thing, which also includes the fundamental science backgrounds, social science, social and arts backgrounds.
Yeah.
But today we do not have anything. Way back in 93, Iceland School of Environment Sciences in Netherlands, a
Yeah.
4 years professional course, had a combination of arts, basic sciences, engineering,
Yeah. No.
which also includes environmental media in 90s. Still, our universities and our academic institutions have to grow a long way in understanding this need, understand and appreciate the multidisciplinary approach. Hope you
Sir,
could talk to
Anna
any
connected.
problem.
అన్న phone లో కనెక్ట్ అయ్యారు. As usual, again internet has been lost, so he has connected through the audio.
Okay. So can we
Yeah,
continue it, or
yeah, we
shall we
can.
go
He's just
further?
yeah.
Okay.
Anna, yeah, Anna, continue, Anna.
Hello, Purushottam Reddy garu. Hello, Professor Purushottam Reddy garu. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
అది ఇంటర్నెట్ కట్ అయింది.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
go ahead, Anna. You can speak, Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I was trying to explain that the world witnessed on one side a tremendous growth in the subject of environment. A lot of quality books were published by eminent people, right from the Silent Spring to Our Common Future. Then what we call the limits to growth, and finally we have the future we want. Second thing is the world also witnessed a lot of tragedies and disasters, particularly on the nuclear front. We had the 3 Mile Island accident in America, and elsewhere in Europe, that is today's Ukraine, which was formerly in USSR. Chernobyl accident it can be described as the world's worst accident. And in spite of USSR being a superpower, they could not handle it. Negligence, human failure, technological failures apart, but ultimately the whole town had to be evacuated within 48 hours. And imagine Chernobyl, a town of 60,000 population then, totally evacuated. And I could see recently a film which showed David Attenborough visiting that particular site. And in his witness statement, he commented that we human beings, we are likely to be erroneous. We are faulty. We are like, and what we call the working culture of any society. Even if there is a slightest of lacunae, we are likely to fail. And therefore, Chernobyl is a classic example that we always need to be cautious, and we need to think about ourselves. So that particular Chernobyl, it enabled me to take up the nuclear issue at Nagarjuna Sagar. When the government of India wanted to set up an atomic power plant at Nagarjuna Sagar in 1987, believe me, friends, Chernobyl, that book on Chernobyl, independent books came out by 1985, and I had a copy of the book in my hand. And having studied the book, I have taken up, along with Professor Shivaji Rao, well-known professor from Andhra University, and Dr. Balgopal, we all took up, and we were able to sensitize the public in 5 districts: Nalgonda, Khammam in Telangana region, but basically Krishna, Guntur, and Prakasham, and partly Mahbub Nagar, but basically the focus was on Nalgonda and Krishna and Prakasham. What a response we got when we went to every college, every university in these regions. Tremendous response, and people supported our cause because they were convinced that we can't afford to have a nuclear reactor at Nagarjuna Sagar, particularly at the entrance of the left canal. And we succeeded in convincing the people. We told them about the what if something goes wrong, the risk management, disaster management, it would become extremely difficult. And can I join on, it is coming, okay, 1 second.
Yeah, please, Anna.
Okay,
Please.
Anna. Okay. Yeah, it is true that the much needed disaster management drills around the nuclear stations, not only around the nuclear stations, even in the earthquake prone areas. Today we need this for flash flood prone areas. But where are the drills? Are we prepared? Still, where are we heading to? There are no answers to it. And environment movement, it did not happen over a period. And many of the policymakers and politicians, they blame, somebody is giving us the money to these environmental activists. Who will give the money to the environment? So environment is part and parcel of our culture. At the same time, the same politicians, they talk of the culture and other things. But the reality is 72, the entire subject, you know, initiated during the Stockholm Conference on Environment and Human Development. And it moved. It is the biologist who brought out the silent spring, emotionally brought out a scientific fact. Limits to the growth. Yes, that's another wonderful book, which I think today it must be made a compulsory study book for all the elected public representatives and selected bureaucrats in the system. We need to look into it. Yeah. I congratulate from bottom of my heart Professor Purushottam Reddy and other associates of him for successfully influence the government to stop establishment of nuclear power plant in the backwaters of Nagarjuna Sagar. It's a real, that was the period where, many multidisciplinary things have come up. Many people left their lucrative jobs and came into this movement. Everybody was trying to understand it because it's a long way to go. How do we go? What should be the institutional mechanisms? Now, from Bhopal to Sarurnagar to Nagarjun Sagar to Chernobyl, we will move to the west of Hyderabad. So, what made you to step towards the west of Hyderabad, Anna?
Yeah, it's a very fantastic journey.
Mhm.
Actually, after Sarunnagar, the people affected by pollution in other areas, for example, Nacharam, Didimatara, Patancheru, they thought that they should approach us because we already got a success. A successful success, definitely people look to somebody who has achieved something. So the first thing that happened is people from Nacharam came to us, and I was there in the department along with my friends, Professor Vakil, FD Vakil, wonderful gentleman and a great orator. The second person was Professor Kodan Ram. We three were sitting there, and other faculty members were there, and Nacharam people came about 20, 30 people. So we all invited them into the seminar room, and they very clearly told us about their problems and how life has become extremely difficult for them, and because of industrial pollution. And they very seriously requested us to help them. Then we told them frankly, look, it is not our original subject. We had to respond in Sarunagar because of personal problem. In fact, we are not all that equipped to take up to help other people. But The Nacharam citizens, people from that area, they said, sir, our problem is very real. You please guide us and we'll do anything that you suggest. So then I told them, look, we'll make an attempt with all seriousness. So I gave a prescription of struggle, and that is 1 day, 1 week relay hunger strike. 1 week relay hunger strikes in Nacharam, where people from different colonies every day would sit and this particular they formed a anti-pollution committee in Nacharam, and almost every day about 1,000 people would sit in the tent. And every day myself along with those days Shivaji Rao was in Hyderabad, so we invited him and Kodanram, Vakil, myself. We were all novices to this subject of environment, but still, because on their invitation we went and we were able to educate them, sensitize them, motivate them. And on the eighth day, the program was march to the Pollution Control Board. And those days it was in Kavadiguda on the adjacent to the petrol pump. So about 2,500 people came on that particular day. And as luck would have it, the Pollution Control Board meeting was taking place. And the board is presided by the chairman, and normally it is a principal secretary rank. And those days it was Mr. Natarajan. So Natarajan was there, and member secretary was there, and the entire board, all the members were there, and including Professor Shivaji Rao. He was one of the expert committees, and N.S.N. Reddy, former mayor of Vishakhapatnam, like this almost. So when we stormed into the PCB, it Mr. Natarajan invited us into the boardroom, and we were there about 40, 50 people, including the colony people, the presidents of the residents welfare associations, and we were able to explain the problem in a scientific manner. Now, Mr. Natarajan, a very senior bureaucrat, he was very positive, and he requested us to wait for about 40 minutes. So that is exactly what we did. We waited, and after 40 minutes, we were invited once again into the boardroom, and we were told that all our demands will be met. Everything, on spontaneously, orders were issued to close down all the polluting industries. Facilities were made to provide safe drinking water to the people. Medical teams would be sent to the area, and the whole cleanup of that industrial area would take place. And they even sanctioned about 40 lakhs to begin the work. And the industries which were polluting, they would remain closed till they set up pollution control devices like ETP, etc. So this was a great success story, and the media had reported this very extensively on the first pages of almost all the papers in Hyderabad. Now, once again, people get an opportunity. They get to know that when citizens protest, they are succeeding. So GD Matla people invited us the very next day. So once again, I gave the same formula. We had a huge hunger strike, 1 day hunger strike there, and a lot of our demands were being met. It was at this stage, my friend Dr. Kishan Rao, a medical practitioner from Patancheru, he came along with his friends from Patancheru and invited us. You know what he said? Sir, you are here, but we have a much, much bigger problem in Patancheru. So please, you are requested to come. So I told him, sir, we'll come tomorrow itself. And I requested him to make, those days, Alvin Nissan was a popular vehicle which facilitated transport of quite a few people. better than any car. So I told them, you arrange a Alvin Nissan and fix a mic, and we will all go and look at the problem in all the villages. So I went to Patancheru along with my friends, and from there we took the help of that Alvin Nissan, which is something like an open top mini truck, and we went about all the areas right from Nakavagu, all those villages, Lagdaram, Pocharam, Ganapati Gudam, Ainur, I still remember Rudraram, and so many other
Muttangi,
places.
Muttangi, and then
Muttangi,
yeah,
and above all, that
Sultanpur.
village, Sultanpur. So we went there. And in every village, because of the wide publicity given by the media, hundreds of farmers and people, women and children, they were waiting with all hopes. So we would go there and tell them what happened in Sarvanagar, Nacharam, Jedimetla. When citizens come together, they will always succeed because the law of the land is in favor of the citizens. So, Patancheru, immediately that particular day in the evening, we formed an anti-pollution committee, Patancheru Anti-Pollution Committee. Kishan Rao Garu was definitely the main convener, and from about 20 villages, there were representatives. And subsequently, we had meetings in Patancheru town. And after that, we launched our agitation. Once again, the same formula, what I told in Nachara. 1 week relay hunger strike, and then march to the assembly. Now, this 1 week, every day, about 5,000 people would come because 20 villages, and every day we would have, the mic will be there, and so many speakers will come, all the sarpanches and everybody, finally, we were there almost every day. And on the last day, I told them, tomorrow, our program march to the assembly is there, but you cannot march from Patancheru to the legislative assembly because of the distance. So I advised them that each village shall organize a lorry, a big lorry, and the farmers and the residents of the village, they shall come in one lorry. So 20 villages, so exactly 20 lorries. And nobody paid for the lorry. The villagers themselves organized the lorry and they came. And all the organizers, they came in about 4 or 5 jeeps. And the program was that we shall all assemble at Indra Park. And from there, we shall march to the Legislative Assembly. Those days, the permitted route was from Indira Park to Nizam College. And, from Nizam College, the police will arrange a transport to the assembly because we had already announced the program and all arrangements were done. So our friends, along with our friend Dr. Krishan Rao and his team, we all marched from Indira Park and from there to Nizam College. And from Nizam College, we went to assembly and we were face to face with N.T. Ramarao, the chief minister. My advantage was that I knew N.T. Ramarao and he also knew me because when he formed the party, Telugu Desam party, I had the opportunity of going to his house every day. I was invited to give lectures to him on the politics of AP, on the economics, politics, and society, and people's problems. So that way, he was almost like my student. So when we were taken to his presence in the assembly, he got up and welcomed us. Oh, my teacher, I'm so happy to receive you. But what brings you here? Then I told him about the problem and how people are suffering. It has totally affected 20 villages or even more. And it is this plight, people are unable to bear, and therefore they have protested. So immediately he called the chief secretary and directed him to call the Medak collector and close down all the polluting industries. So 22 industries were closed down just because of this, march to the assembly. Now what happened? The beauty is, that day evening, the industrialists immediately they approached their advocates. So I remember there were 6 leading advocates on the side of the industry, including 2 former advocate generals. And then our farmer friends, from Patancheru, including Dr. Kishan Rao, all of them in the night around 10 o'clock, they gave me a call. And those days it was only the landline. So they said, sir, tomorrow uh, the industrialists are approaching the High Court. Then at 10 o'clock in the night, I said, now it will be too late to search for an advocate. But don't worry, I'll be there. If necessary, we'll speak, depending upon the situation. And once again, when our intentions are good, then everything else also, even the judge, uh, Justice Lakshman Rao, he was there, and what a wonderful person. So he was there, and when the case came up for hearing around 11:30, I, along with Kishan Rao Garu and about 200 farmers, we were there in the court hall itself. And other side, there were 6 advocates, but all of them agreed to because it's a similar matter, and therefore, former Advocate General Mr. Manohar was requested to take up to plead for all the industries. So the hearing started, and after about half an hour, we said, Your Lordship, we are here of the suffering people of Patancheru. So we request you to permit us to present our view. Justice Lakshman Rao, being a great humanist, he immediately realized, and he said, "Don't worry, I will give you opportunity. I will." Then all this awareness, I think it is because of the media coverage and our agitation going to the CM and CM ordering the closure of industries. So when my turn came after about half an hour, I gave a lecture exactly for 1 hour, and then I stopped, and I told, and subsequently I had a couple of times more, and finally I said, Your Lordship, I request you to note that we were able to close down the industries after a tremendous prolonged struggle, and now if the High Court once again allows the industries to pollute, then that action can be described as having passed a death sentence on the suffering people of Patanjali. Justice Lakshman Rao, I really hats off to that wonderful person. He agreed, and he gave an extraordinary direction, and he said that the judgment was that the industries shall remain closed till the time they set up effluent treatment plants, and the PCB has to certify to that extent. Only then they will be permitted to vote. I mean, to function. Now the question is, that was a great victory for the people of Patancheru, and I always say that it was because of the technology of protest. A social scientist should always consider society as his lab, and why some agitation succeed is it is the technology of protest. So when we are talking about protest, only 1 minute. When we are talking about protest, the one who leads the people, he has to take into consideration, he or she, they have to take into consideration the limits of the people also. And the person should be definitely an authority about the constitution, about the limits of the judiciary and the executive, and then design an action plan where with the least effort people should get a success. This is exactly what happened in Patanjali. Now, Subhana, please.
Thank you. The international journey started in 1972 and Indian journey started in 1984, say after 12 years. And then individuals suffering due to pollution and how the conviction, the realization consolidated itself as a conviction and how this conviction motivated, inspired the affected people to come together to raise voice against their right to life, you know, fight against the pollution and asking the system to give them assurance on right to life. Everybody thinks, that environment movements only jobless people do. These jobless people have created jobs. These jobless people created intervention of the new technologies. If you look into the history of environment movement in Hyderabad or elsewhere in the world, particularly we are close to Hyderabad, let us look. Because of this movement and Sri Lakshman Rao Garu, High Court Judge, his verdict, today you have effluent treatment plants. But for this movement, I am sure governments will sleep. So look into the positive aspect of it. Today, many citizens say, "Sir, you see how we can do the protest," because everybody suffers from some kind of a fear psychosis. They do not want to come out, but at the same time, they want the benefit of others' work. Today's main message to viewers is: it is these environment movements. It is not merely going and shouting like the rallies what we see. It calls for a lot of mental debate, discussion, analysis. How do we reach out? What is the social psychology of, and psychology of an individual is different from mob psychology. And again, I congratulate Professor Purushottam Reddy and his colleagues and Dr. Kishan Rao, particularly making an activism to proactive and making the system to function. That is most important. You see, we are nobody is against an economic growth. We want an economic growth in a true sense. So this is where, and another point which my observation which really made me to move close to this movement is no lathi charge, no tear gas, no violence. How it could happen? Okay, so this is what I am saying. How entire peaceful Gandhian movement, the so-called Gandhians, sitting in Delhi with starch, khadi, and all, talk about it. But I have not come across such a peaceful protest last for decades in this country. Please, your observation and comments, sir.
Yeah, I just wish to make a couple of points. One, zero violence. as you rightly pointed out. Secondly, zero hatred also. We never promoted hatred against anyone. So I think it speaks volumes about our own confidence on the political system. But after Nagarn Sagar, that is Patancheru to Nagarn Sagar, I have to make I have to bring to your notice one more point, and that is what happened during 1988 and 89. I had the fortune, I had the benefit of working with B.V. Subbarao, thanks to Radhakrishna Garu, and believe me, at least a dozen youngsters, including uh, Dr. Narasimha Reddy, Harnath, and Gopal Krishna. So many youngsters, uh, and Patanjali Shastri from different places of Andhra Pradesh coming together with the noble intention of, publishing the best report in the regional language. That is Andhra Pradesh Paryavarna Paristhiti Praja Nivedika. And believe me, that particular report, we ensured, we never sold a single copy also. Though 10,000 copies of the report were
Published.
published, and extraordinarily, wonderful uh, paper coverage, what we call even the cover page, etc., and marvelous production. And believe me, friends, almost every media personality in the entire state of Andhra Pradesh got a copy. In addition to that, it was a must for any political activist, including our friends from the extreme left. Many a time they would come and take copies because that particular report was something like a blueprint for a peaceful transformation for sustainable development. Particularly, I always mention, and I'm grateful to Subbarao Garu, I always say that the last chapter is something like Agenda 21, which the 1992 Rio Conference adopted. So not only we were helping the pollution affected people, but we actually came out with a report which is, in my opinion, it is as good as our common future, because we covered everything, including urban issues, local issues, village issues, industrialization, agriculture, forestry, including mining. Marvelous report. I'm sorry to be praising our own report, but then it's not just Purushottam Reddy or Subbarao praising the report. That report has been hailed by New York Times and almost all the leading papers of the country. That is why it's a big milestone in the environmental struggles of India.
Thank you.
Anna.
You see, today what I felt is uh, we will start with what made us to step into this and then start looking into the things. How it culminated by 1990. You know, one thing is we could sensitize the judicial system. We could also bring out a report, particularly with the great support of late Harnath Garu and others who contributed to this and all. And from a typical, you know, a victim, I say a journey of victimization to victory, I say. We could bring thought process in the industrial process, new technologies, need for new technologies, new interventions, new management systems. Even ISO 14,000, ISO started at that period only. And ETPs started at that period only. Okay? And it gave a lot of, as you rightly pointed out, we never hated anybody. That gave a lot of insights working with industry also, where I had the opportunity of working with six industrial associations and interacting with 32 chemical and pharmaceutical industries, and also look into the PCB and helping the PCB in building the capacities of the engineers through seminars and workshops. That was a great journey till 1990. A book. So actually, when I when we had the plan of having, and I don't say this is a typical interview and all, it's an interaction with Anna, big brother. I was wondering, how to go about. Typically, the interactions in the interviews, 1 hour, and we put everything into it. But to viewers, we are coming out with 9 more episodes because God has given the opportunity to take environment to judicial system. An exclusive episode on environment and judiciary, and environment academics and research. This is another one. And legal
on
institutions, planning,
another
planning,
farmers
planning
also.
institutions, building the capacities in the environment, and how do we bring a convergence for a synergy towards a sustainable development. There are many things. And finally, what I felt is, and before that, citizens, seminars and workshops, gram sabhas, our community interactions, which is, which plays a vital role. And finally, what I felt is to whom we should pass on this baton. We are reaching to you know, the what do you call the tape, winning tape, last leg of the race. So we need to pass on this baton. And generations have changed, socio-political economics have changed, situations have changed. Though science and technology improved, situations of quality of life is deteriorating. We are only looking into the cosmetic treatment what system is provided. ऊपर से शेरवानी अंदर से परेशानी. This is there everywhere. So passing on the baton is a big challenge. So these are the contributions, and environment movement is not a something, a piecemeal project conflict. It's a continual upheaval in the human civilization. It doesn't start with an individual and it doesn't stop with an individual. Things will change. And an exclusive episode I am drafting on environment and policy making and time to change the political system. So these are the, so I humbly request Anna, Professor Purushottam Reddy garu to spare time for another 9 or 10 episodes.
Sure, sure, Anna.
We
That
have to,
gives me a lot of happiness.
thank you, thank you. Because the subject, every time we go and talk to the people and all, it's not that. Today we could see, how we moved from one phase to the other. It's a big struggle. It's not one day issue. And I proudly, express uh, Dr. Professor Purushottam Reddy Garu and his colleagues, and with God's grace, I was also associate. This is the only movement in this country supported by the citizens, intervened in more than 8 sectors, judiciary to citizens to Gram Sabha to political people. No other environment movement could contribute to it. People may think I am an egoistic, let them think. And I challenge also. Let them come for an open debate. And I have seen the people. I'm sorry, but sometimes we have to express our. I'm sorry, but sometimes I feel like expressing things. What kind of backdoor activities happen in the environment? People sitting in Delhi buying the awards and rewards. So we are not looking into it. The only strength of this moment, where a reporter of New York Times walked into the Hyderabad Barbara Crossett, published in 92 New York Times. We will come out with an exclusive episode on our consolidation of thoughts through a status report. We will also come out with this.
Right.
So we look for your feedback. Please share your opinion, thoughts. If you have any specific questions, please share us, and we will soon announce the calendar of our coming episodes. So I thank uh, Swami for giving this opportunity and giving this platform to reach out to millions of people. Thank you so much. And let us do this in the auspicious
Thank you.
month of Kartika Masa.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Agreed.
కార్తీక మాసమే చాలా ముఖ్యమైనది. సో
ఎందుకంటే కార్తీక మాసంలో దీపం పెడతాం చీకటిని పోగొట్టడానికి. ఈ 10 ఎపిసోడ్స్ మనిషిలో ఉన్న చెడు ఆలోచనలను తీసేయాలని కోరుకుంటున్నాను.
మంచి మాట
Wonderful.
చెప్పారు. 1972 నుంచి 1990 వరకు వచ్చాం మనం ఇప్పుడు. ఏ విధంగా పర్యావరణ ఉద్యమాలు, నష్టాలు ఏ విధంగా సంభవించినాయి, ఆ నష్టాల్లో నుంచి వచ్చినటువంటి ఉద్యమం ఏ విధంగా మళ్ళీ మనం చెప్పుకున్నట్టు సాధించి, అంటే ప్రజలను చైతన్యవంతులను చేస్తూ, ఇది తప్పు, ఇది మనకు అవసరం లేదు, మన జీవనానికి ఇది అవసరం లేదు అనే ఒక సమాలోచనతో వచ్చినటువంటి ఉద్యమమే ఈ పర్యావరణ ఉద్యమం. ప్రొఫెసర్ కె పురుషోత్తం రెడ్డి గారు కానీ వారితో ఉన్న వారందరూ కూడా, అదేవిధంగా పివి సుబ్బారావు గారు, మేము ఎవరిని ఇక్కడ ఇది చేయడం లేదు, కించపరచడం లేదు. మిగతా వాళ్ళు ఎవరెవరైతే దీన్ని పర్యావరణం ద్వారా మన జీవనాన్ని, ప్రకృతి శైలిని రక్షించే ప్రయత్నం చేసిన వాళ్ళందరినీ అభినందిస్తూ 90 వరకు మనం వచ్చాం. ఏ విధంగా కోర్టుల ద్వారా కూడా, న్యాయస్థానాల ద్వారా కూడా మనము ఈ అంశాలపై వాటి దృష్టికి తీసుకువెళ్తూ న్యాయ విచారణ, అంటే అడ్వకేట్ కమిషన్ కూడా ఏర్పాటు చేసే దిశగా కూడా ఆ కాలంలోనే తీసుకుపోగలిగినామంటే, మరి ఇప్పుడు సాంకేతిక విప్లవం జరిగిన సమయంలో ఎందుకు మనం ముందుకు పోవడం లేదు? ఈ ఆలోచన అందరికీ రావాలి. అందు గురించే మేము నిత్యం వేరే షోస్ చేస్తే బాగా డబ్బు వస్తుంది, కానీ ఆ డబ్బు వస్తే రేపు మనం ఇప్పుడు అనుభవించడానికి, మన పిల్లలు అనుభవించడానికి అటువంటి పర్యావరణం, వాతావరణం ఉండాలన్నా వద్దా? మీరు ఆలోచన చేయండి. కేవలం డబ్బు కోసం మనం చేస్తే అజ్ఞానులం అవుతాం. ఇంత జ్ఞానం వారిద్దరు ఇచ్చారు. వారితో పాటు ఎంతో మంది శ్రమించి ఇచ్చినటువంటి ఈ పర్యావరణ జ్ఞానాన్ని ఇప్పటికైనా మనం ఆలోచన చేసే విధంగా మార్పు వైపు పోతూ ఇప్పుడు ఉన్నటువంటి వర్తమానాన్ని, మనం రక్షించుకుంటూ భవిష్యత్తు మన పిల్లలకు అంధకారం కాకుండా మంచి జీవన శైలి అంటే ఒక మంచి జీవితాన్ని గడిపే విధంగా అటువంటి వాతావరణాన్ని అటువంటి పర్యావరణాన్ని మనం ఇచ్చే విధంగా ఆలోచన చేయాలంటే ఇప్పుడు మనం ఆలోచనలో మార్పు తీసుకొచ్చి ఆ ప్రక్రియను మొదలు పెడితే తప్ప మనం ఆపలేము. ఇంత వేడి, విపరీతమైన వర్షం, కుండపోత వర్షం, మొత్తం ఎక్కడ చూసినా వరదలు, మన ఇంటి చుట్టూ వరదలు, బయటికి పోలేనటువంటి పరిస్థితి దుస్థితి ఈరోజు ఏర్పడుతుందంటే ఆలోచన చేయండి. ఇప్పుడు కాకపోతే ఇంకెప్పుడు లేదు. సార్ థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.
థ్యాంక్స్ సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
థ్యాంక్ యూ
Thank
వెరీ
you.
మచ్.
నమస్తే, నమస్తే.
Thank you. Thank you.
కొనసాగింపుగా సిరీస్ వస్తాయి. అందరూ కూడా సపోర్ట్ డిఆర్టీఎస్పిఆర్ ఛానల్స్, సిటిజన్స్ డిఆర్టీఎస్పిఆర్ ఛానల్స్, ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్ పీపుల్ డిఆర్టీఎస్పిఆర్ ఛానల్. మీరు అందరూ ప్రశ్నలు ఇస్తూ ఉంటారు. ఈ సమాచారం, ఈ మహానుభావుల ద్వారా వచ్చినటువంటి సమాచారం ఇదే లింక్ ఉంటుంది. మీరు ఎవరు కావలిస్తే వారు డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఎటువంటి ఇబ్బందులు లేవు. ఈ జ్ఞానాన్ని మీకు ఇవ్వడానికే ఈ ఛానల్స్. అందుగురించి గురువు గారు, గురుతుల్యులు కూడా ఆ రోజు నాతో చెప్పి మొదలు పెట్టించిందే ఇది. ఈ జ్ఞానాన్ని ప్రపంచానికి అందించే విధంగా మనం చేయాలా. అందుగురించే దీంట్లో ఉన్నటువంటి వీడియోస్ అన్ని మీరు డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఇంకా మీరు మంచి విషయాలు ఉంటే కూడా జోడించవచ్చు. ఇంకా మీరు మమ్మల్ని ఏమైనా వ్యతిరేకిస్తుంటే కూడా మా షోలో పాల్గొనవచ్చు మా గురువు గారు ఎప్పుడు. ధన్యవాదాలు.